The global collections that I'm going to cover here include the fields collection. This is a collection of fields within the current data set. The globals collection, which is a collection of global system report variables. A couple things that you can use here: execution time and page number. There's a user collection, which has information about the current user, including the username and language. Report items, which is a collection of report items, basically text boxes on the report. And then variables. These are the collection of user-defined report and group variables. All right, so real briefly, just a little bit more about the fields collection. I've already talked about the fields collection, and you see it used over and over again because it's the primary way that a text box on a report displays a piece of information from a field within the data set that's bound to the report. So you use this collection in order to refer to a field in the data set. And here's the basic syntax. So use the collection name, fields, and then bang, exclamation point, the name of the field, and then dot property. Now in most cases, the property name that you use is value because you want to access the value of that field. But there's one other property that can be handy, is missing. This property lets you test for the existence of a field in the data set and returns either true or false. One way you might use this property would be to show or hide a column for the field. And it's particularly useful when a data set comes from a stored procedure that produces different columns for each invocation. Okay, next collection I want to talk about is the globals collection. The globals collection consists of several system items that are global to the report and generic in nature, but have no dependency on the report data. And some of the more interesting ones include execution time. This is a date-time value that returns the time that the report was run. What's nice about this one is that once the report starts executing, the value of this global execution time doesn't change. So it might take 10 minutes to generate a report. There's only one execution time, and so you can display it on every page and it'll be the same value. Another one is report folder. This is a string value that returns the full path to the folder in which the report resides on the server. Report name is a string value that returns the name of the report. Report server URL is a string value that returns the URL for the report server. And then there's page number. This is an integer that returns the current page number either from the first page or since the count was reset using the reset page number property. So you can actually essentially group the pages of your report, number them differently, even though it's all the same report. Then there's a corresponding overall page number. This once again is an integer value that returns the page number but counts from the first page of the report. So it's going to be the overall page number that you're at so far. Then there's a total pages. This is an integer value that returns the total number of report pages, either from the first page or, once again, since the count was reset using the reset page number property. And then there's overall total pages, which is total number of pages in the report, counting all of them. Now, you can reference members of the globals collection using either of these forms, equal globals bang execution time, or square brackets ampersand execution time. So the ampersand indicates that you want to access the globals collection. Members of the globals collection have a variant data type. And that may mean that in order to use the values, you might have to use a data type conversion function to achieve the correct result that you need for an expression, particularly if you're doing some sort of numeric operation or something like that. All right, next one I want to talk about is the user collection. This is a global collection that deals with user identity. And it has members that are useful when you create multilingual reports or you need to implement row-level security, as just a couple of examples. So there's two items within this collection. One is language, and this returns a string that contains the language of the user running the report. So for example, for United States English, it's going to be equal to EN-US. And there's various other combinations for pretty much all languages in all countries around the world. And then there's user ID. and this returns a string with the Windows username of the authenticated user running the report. You can use this value to identify who ran the report or to implement data security. One thing about this, though, is that the value is useful only when the user is viewing a report interactively. So if you subscribe to a report that's generated automatically on the system, there's no logged in user that's actually looking at the report, then it's not useful information. So be careful with that. All right, next collection is the report items collection. This collection lets you reference other text boxes on the report. So items within the collection have just a single property called value. The report items collection is useful for referring to one text box on the report from another. And in particular, this ability is especially useful when you want to perform a calculation to display percentages. So you have a series of numbers, you have a total at the bottom, and you want to display the percentage for each of those rows, that value for each of those rows, relative to the total value. So this is how you can reference other text boxes on the report. And for the most part, reporting services takes care of doing all the right thing in order to generate the numbers at the right time in order to generate those percentages. And again, that's just one way of using it. And then the basic syntax that you use to reference a member of the report items collection is report items, bang, the text box name, dot value. All right, then the last collection I want to talk about is the variables collection. This is useful when you have a calculation that you want to compute once, but reference from multiple places within the report. There are two types of variables, both of which you can access using this collection. One is report variables. These you define and set the value using the Variables tab of the Report Properties dialog box. And the report variables are calculated once per report. And then there are also group variables. A group variable works just like a report variable, but it's calculated once per unique group value. So you define and set the value of the group variables using the Variables tab of the Group Properties dialog box. It's essentially a different scope for the variable, just within a particular group, as opposed to the entire report. Okay, so let's take a look at how you can use some of these collections and their members within a report. The Employee List Globals report that I show here is something I originally created in order to explore how to create custom functions for reports. So this is a variation of that report. The difference here is that the Globals version includes a page header and a footer. The header contains the report title, so that this is going to display on every page. And then the footer contains information and some of the properties provided by the global collections. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and preview this so you can see what the report looks like. All right, so there's the page header. And then I have basically just the employees of AdventureWorks, their job title, birth date. I calculate the age and the hire date. But then if we scroll down here to the bottom, you can see that we have various kinds of report information. You can see that the language, I happen to be speaking English. I'm located in the United States, so my default language is EN-US. I'm previewing this here within SQL Server Data Tools, not on a report server, so the report folder is empty. But if I were to execute this from the report server, that would display something. There's the report name, and you can see that that matches the report name right there. The report server URL, again, I'm not using a report server for this, so that's empty. I'm logged in as AppDev user. And then overall page is 1 of 7, and it's page 1 of 7. This particular report doesn't reset the page number, so those are always going to be the same. And then as you can see, it's fairly late in the evening, and so the current time is 8:51 p.m. and time variable is 8:51, execution time is 8:51. So I'll explain the differences between those values shortly. All right, so I'll go back to design view now. Okay, so once again, this is a design view. So it shows the header here, has a single text box within the header, and then basically below that line right there is the footer. So on this left side here, I have a couple of items from the user collection, displays the language, and displays the user ID. And so you saw what values those return for me in my environment logged in as AppDev user. And then there are 3 from the globals collection: the report folder, the report name, and the report server URL. Now notice for all of these, I'm referencing them using the ampersand. So that tells the report where to look for those values. Okay, then the information on the right-hand side here had the page numbers as well as some time information. Okay, so the first text box, I'll right-click in this and look at expression. And you can see that I say overall page is globals bang overall page number of globals bang overall total pages and saved pages. So that's how I got that string of overall 1 of 7 pages. So as you can see, it's pretty easy to use these members of the globals collection in order to display information about the report. And the overall total pages is pretty nice to be able to display. Okay, then very similarly, the second text box here displays the page number and total pages. So again, this is only going to produce something different from the expression I just showed you a moment ago if you reset the page number someplace during report execution. By default, those two are always going to be the same. So generally, you're only going to need to use one or the other. Okay, the other text boxes here are a bit more interesting. They display various time values. The first of the 3 text boxes displays the current time when the page was rendered. So I'll look at that and show expression. And you can see that I'm using the datetime object, the now property of it, and converting it to a long time string in order to display the current time. So this expression is going to be evaluated for each page within the report. So to show you that, I'm going to come back over here to preview, scroll down to the bottom here, and you can see that it's now 8:55:31. And so this is the current time. It's refreshing it each time display the page. All right, so now I've yacked for a few seconds. Remember that it was 8:55:31. I'm going to go to the next page, and you can see that it's now 8:55:49. So I yacked for about 16 seconds about this. And if I go to the third page, it's going to be a few seconds later as well, 8:56:01. Okay, now the second item here is the time variable, 8:55:31. So remember, that was the first time value that I had here. And if I go to the next page, which is now page 4, you can see that it's still 8:55:31. So as you can see, that's a static value. So I'm going to go back over here to Design, and I'm going to right-click here outside the Design surface in order to open up Report Properties. And I'll go to the Variables page here. And so as you can see, I defined a time variable, and I specified an expression using this expression that opens up the expression editor. And so now I'm using pretty much that same expression in order to get the current time converted to a long time string. But because this is a report variable, this is going to be executed only once when I start executing the report. And then within the text box where I want to use it, I just reference that time variable. So I'm using the variables collection, I specify the name that I gave it, and its value. And so that's why that text box for this expression is going to be the same, because this variable is calculated only once when the report starts being executed. Okay, then this third text box, if I once again preview the report and go down to the bottom, notice that it's now 8:58. Okay, and that's actually a little bit later. So it grabbed these values, and then there was 1 second later. So I'll go to the next page, and notice that these are still 8:58:00, while this value has changed a little bit. One more time, just to make the point. It's still the same, and a few seconds later. Okay, the reason why I'm getting that constant value is that this is using the globals execution time property, once again converted to a long time string. So this is another value that is executed once when the report starts executing. So just at the start of execution, and then it stays constant. So you'll want to make sure that you use the right time value in the right way using the right globals collection objects, because it's going to make a difference in how and what's displayed or how the time is displayed on the report, if that's something that you display as part of the report.